Alright guys, welcome to an IL2 tutorial, and here at the Wolfpack we're going to be starting up our Tuskegee Airman campaign, which I am very proud of. It took quite a while. It was a couple of summers ago that I created it, and this is a theater. We're in Italy online. This is a map called Italy Online, and we're going to be practicing some takeoffs and landings. And the P-40 specifically. So looking a little bit at the Flying Tigers manual, which you can find online, I'll post it in the description. The P-40 has some interesting flight characteristics. I was just looking at some takeoff speeds, some landing speeds, as well as some manifold and RPM settings. And for those of you that don't know, there's your manifold gauge. It's basically your primary indication of power in a complex aircraft which has a controlled pitch prop, and down over here is your RPM indicator, and that shows how fast the revolutions per minute, or how fast the prop is turning. So in a complex aircraft with the prop lever here, you can see that moving, you have the capability to adjust the coarseness or fineness of the propeller, and that gives you varying angles on the blade, and that enables you to basically it acts kind of like it's been compared to a gear on a car. So if you're at high altitude, you're gonna want to increase the angle of the propeller, and that's going to take a bigger chunk of air at higher altitude where the air is very thin. Now if you're at sea level, or if you want a good climb rate, you're going to make that very fine, and at sea level it's going to move a lot more air, a lot faster. Anyway, you can read a lot about that on your own, but basically you want a full 100% pitch for takeoff. And again, this will be a normal takeoff and landing. Landing speed is about 95 miles per hour. Our airspeed indicator is in miles per hour, not the traditional knots like we use today. And let's give it a go. So first thing I do is I always lock the tail wheel. We'll go ahead and do takeoff flaps, and open the radiator to the full open position. Okay, I like to start the roll at about 75% power, which is roughly 35 on the manifold pressure. Again, that's your primary indication of power. And you're going to need some right rudder. As the nose comes down, then I will gradually increase to about 100% power, or 45, and at 100 knots, excuse me, at 100 miles an hour, go ahead and rotate. As soon as you're up, we're going to raise the gear, and we'll maintain 45 on the manifold pressure until we climb to about 500 feet. As soon as we're safely above the ground, we're going to go ahead and retract our flaps slowly, and trim out any necessary control inputs that we need to. So there's 500 feet, and then we'll make a turn to the left, and we'll shoot for 150 knots. So again, this is just a tutorial on how you can practice takeoffs and landings. Just gives you essentially a method of doing that. So there's 150 knots, and I'm going to try to pitch up to keep that. And you can see there, see the nose of that aircraft, the propeller hub, or the cowling there, the air intake. I call that the nose right there, and you always want to keep that above the horizon. As we reach 1,000 feet, which is our primary altitude, I'll go ahead and bring the manifold pressure back to 2,700 RPM. And that should help us maintain roughly 150 knots, a little bit fast because I was slow on the power reduction there. And you can see we did one continuous turn to the downwind leg. Again, keep that nose up. I'll go ahead and trim out the rudder. So right there is the ball. You will always want to trim out the rudder controls. And I have that mapped to a joystick button. So as soon as we're beam here, we're going to go ahead and gear down, and one notch of flaps, and we'll reduce power to right around 27 or 40% power. Okay. You can see that we're real low. I just lost power because I was distracted talking about the ball there. But yeah, you want to have rudder trim because you're always trimming rudder inputs. And of course you need to have elevator and pitch trim, but rudder trim is just as important in the IL2 because the massive amount of torque that these engines produce. Looking at, I don't know, maybe 1800 horsepower up there. So you do always want to be adjusting that. And so again, keep the nose of the aircraft above the horizon, and we're shooting for 100 knots. And as we come around the base leg, I'll go ahead and do the second notch of flaps, which you can see the flap indicator there, about 15 degrees of flaps. And as we turn to final, again, keep the nose up. Common mistake that a lot of pilots make, in real life training included, is that they want to bring the nose down because it's counterintuitive. You're trying to get down, so obviously your brain thinks, well, I got to bring the nose down. But actually, to get to the proper approach speed, you want to keep the nose up. Alright, so as we come to final here, I'll go ahead and put in the last notch of flaps. And you see our airspeed just kind of hovering right at 100. And I like to keep about 27 on the manifold pressure as we come in. So just keep coming down. You're still holding the nose up to keep 100 knots, and you're just controlling your descent rate with your power. As you come over the threshold here, I just want you to see what that looks like from the outside view. Notice how we're kind of in a nice little ground effect. As soon as the wheels touch down, just keep the power on. Go ahead and neutralize the elevator. That means let go of the back pressure that you were holding. And so as you touch down, go ahead and retract one flaps and go 100% again, 100% power. And that's how you do a touch and go. 100 knots, you should start coming off the ground. There we go. So as you get a nice climb rate, go ahead and gear up. And you're ready to do it all over again. Alright, so I hope that was an informative tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the World War II skies.